So, Kev, today is Tuesday, June 6th. We're joined today by a really awesome guest, Jacob Turner, former Major League Baseball player. Jacob, is it true you were the highest paid Major League draftee at the time you were drafted by the Tigers? Is that right?
By the Tigers, one of the highest paid high school draftees. The draft was a little bit different than it is now in terms of how it's structured, but yeah.
Got it. So, and today you're a wealth advisor. You work in investment advisor. So you had the unique experience that many elite athletes had of inheriting or being given an enormous amount of money at a very young age, and it was like, okay, go figure this out, right? Were you ready for that? Was that did you have family and advisors to support you, or was it like, holy shit, I just got millions of dollars, what do I do?
I think it was a combination of the two. It's one of the reasons why I'm probably so passionate about what we do now. But my mom had a background in accounting, so she taught me Excel spreadsheets like at 18 years old. That certainly helped. My dad owned a small business, so that helped too. But we certainly didn't come from a family that used quote unquote financial advisors. My parents never had a financial advisor. They kind of winged it, for lack of a better term. And when I first got drafted, all I thought was like, all right, well, I don't want to end up on 30 for 30 broke and lose all this money. So that led to me hiring people, ultimately firing some people, but finding a pretty good team.
I love the mental picture of young Jacob Turner, like with his Excel spreadsheet, like after being drafted by the Tigers, being like putting in like zero,
yeah.
zero, 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 zero,
So,
enter.
so I can still remember how I chose the financial advisor that I worked with was a family friend had recommended them. I met with nobody else. I met with one guy. We sat around their dining room table. He told me about like risk tolerance questionnaires, all these words I knew nothing about. And I just got to the end of the meeting. He's like, "What do you think?" And I was like, "Well, I got nobody else, so it sounds like we're moving forward."
You're hired.
And to your point, though, Eric, about like automation, I always tell people the best thing I had was I didn't automate anything, and so it made me be conscious of like what I was spending and what I was investing. And I think athletes go one of two ways. I probably went the way of spending less money than I could have, but at the same time, it definitely created good habits for the long term.
So it went well for you then.
Certainly, yeah. Well, I joke with people. I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but in terms of market timing, if you start investing in 2009, you're a pretty good market timer. So in terms of starting that compounding engine, it was a good time to be invested.
We're picking up what you're putting down here, Jacob. We got you. So do you have a lot of athlete clients today, or?
Yeah, about half of our business is athletes today, which is enjoyable for me. I mean, it's a unique side of the business. A lot of the elements that they're dealing with are unique to them. But I think it goes back to like any business you have, as you guys know, like any service-based business you have, if you have a niche, if somebody fits into that niche, it becomes almost easier to serve them because you're constantly seeing the same things over and over again. If you thought about you guys, if you guys were trying to practice every different kind of law out there, it'd be a little bit more challenging than being hyper-focused on what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great point.
Yeah,
we talk about that constantly, like not going too far from home base and how, the inefficiencies that come along with that. And I was at I don't know if I've told you the story or not, Kevin, but I was at a local happy hour here in Horizon, West Florida for like professionals. And there were two lawyers, the personal injury attorney who sponsored the event. And then there was the old timer lawyer, and he goes, anything that Gary doesn't, or you got Gary for personal injury, then you got me for everything else.
That's how it is, right?
Yeah.
It is.
So
Yeah, in a lot of respects.
I'm curious, what made you
terrifying.
guys feel confident about niching down at the beginning when you were first starting your business?
Did we feel confident, Kevin?
we didn't feel super confident. But I mean, we say that we knew launching our law firm that like there was no sure bet, right? Like things could go horribly, but we were launching it off of a springboard of almost being forced to do it. Because like you talk about your story hiring the financial advisor, like I was going to make a joke, but you moved on too quickly. That's how Eric's first SMB clients hired Eric, right? Was like ping them on Twitter and be like, I got
like,
nobody
hey,
else. Like,
help
you
me
sound
find
good.
somebody.
But
yeah. Over and over again.
But it almost literally was like the deal volume, the lead volume just went completely berserk as soon as Eric started just providing valuable content, right?
Put
and
that in
people
quotations,
appreciated it.
Kevin.
Yeah,
And,
that's
90%.
that's a relative
well,
term. I
yeah.
think.
Yeah, for sure.
Eric used to provide valuable content, but pre Pizza Friday. But yeah, I mean, so look, there was no sure bet. We knew we were taking a risk to like leave the cushy big law firm and corporate environments and whatever. But it really was with that backdrop of like the whole idea was born out of, man, there are a lot of people blowing us up looking for high quality, competent, but cost effective M&A lawyers. So we kind of knew that there was a base there, and that if we focused and went all in on small business M&A, we would very quickly gain the expertise we needed to confidently do these deals efficiently, right? And so we kind of let in from day one, like, no, we're niching down and we're focusing on this one thing. We're going to stay in our lane and just become experts at it.
And being a ultra niche service provider is smart, but it's also very risky for diversification reasons, for obvious reasons. And we weren't sure. Like, it was around this time last year, well, I guess a month ago last year, that like I vividly remember being in the shower and being like, this is either this is either going to go great or it's going to be the dumbest thing a lawyer has ever done, quitting Kirkland and Ellis to go do Twitter-based M&A, right? And it's gone amazingly well, but it's not lost on me that, like, I think back to the Great Recession and there was a bunch of lawyers in New York that had done nothing but 144A bond offerings over and over and over again for, their whole career. And then all of a sudden you get smashed by a recession, that work completely goes away. And like, what are you going to do? You're going to move to, small town, Topeka, Kansas, and go do family law all of a sudden? Like, you're not qualified to do it. So, it is always a little interesting to see the way people develop their businesses between niche work and,
Well, I think
being
that
deep but broad.
I think that's one thing that I talk a lot about in terms of the connection between, like, when I think about my sports career and then entrepreneurship now, that speaks to that point, Eric, is like always having I call it keeping your foot on the gas, but it's almost having this sense that it could all go away tomorrow. In sports, it's really elevated because you could walk in on a Tuesday, you could be doing an okay job, but if they find a guy that's a little bit cheaper that's doing a better job than you, you're out. And there's no performance plan to improve. It's gone. And then you're building your way back up. But I think entrepreneurship, and especially in like any niche business, is the same way. You have to have this healthy fear that if I don't keep my foot on the gas and keep improving with technology and everything else, like, it could all go away tomorrow.
Well, and also paying attention to the trends. But you brought up a really good point, Jacob, because that is why I actually did not pursue a career in Major League Sports for that exact reason that just described right there.
I figured. You took your foot off the gas just before you were going to get drafted, and they said, Eric, you're out. Jacob, you're in.
He did the scouts were watching him, and he was like, you know what, guys, just I'm not that interested. I'm destined for
like, this man is eating nothing but pizza during 2 days for the last.
So if you could have told yourself at the height of your guys' corporate law careers for each of you, whenever you think about what the height was, like, you're at the point where you think that this is going to be the thing I'm going to do for the next 20, 30 years of my life. That fast forward a few years, you'd be posting on Twitter to teach people, engage people, ultimately build a business. What would have that version of you said?
I probably would have been pretty excited, to be honest, because, I think people, I think much like Major League Athletics, you guys probably go through with the same sense that elite lawyers go through their career with, which is, this is great right now, but this is not going to last forever, and then what, right? And so you're in Cravath or Kirkland and Ellis or Simpson Thatcher or whatever elite law firm going, I'm probably not going to make partner. My options, the well-worn paths, are to go in-house to a large company, which means a cut in pay, but probably in this environment the same number of hours for less money. And I'm going to be like Stanley Hudson on The Office, where I've got my coffee cup in my chair and I'm going to be dying as a W-2. that's pretty much your only main option. And Kevin, in fact, that's where Kevin was largely. I mean, I don't know that you would describe it the same way, but Kevin was in-house with a company when we started the firm. Or I'm going to go down market as a lawyer, make less money, probably have the same demands, but for lower compensation. Or I'm going to throw the whole thing out and just go do whatever, what is whatever, and most lawyers are risk averse. And so there is a whole generation, I could tell you, of elite, highly educated lawyers that have, 7-figure net worths that are going, what the hell am I going to do with my life? Mm-hmm. Right. And so the fact that at least for me, and Kevin, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but for me, having something that we've now developed that is ours, that we can, that is working, that is enjoyable, that, we can do, I can do for the next 20 years and, probably in different, back to our niche conversation. I don't know what it'll look like exactly, but it's been a very exhilarating experience for me, even when it's been, the miserable first portion of entrepreneurship. I don't know if you see it differently, Kevin, but that's my answer to that.
I see it a little differently only because I didn't grow up seeing entrepreneurship. I grew up in a very corporate environment. I'm the youngest of 6 kids. I had 3 siblings that worked at Goldman Sachs, right? Investment banking, whatever. So to me, entrepreneurship was kind of viewed of like, oh, those are the people that can't get jobs type of thing. And so, like, to your question, if you had asked me at the height of that career, like, there's no way. Like, this would have been the craziest idea ever, because I really was chasing, like, I wanted that partner office, I wanted the partner role, I wanted the deals that I was working on to be on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. Like, I was, young lawyer me was chasing that. And Eric and I were actually talking separately earlier today about, like, that mind shift and starting to change priorities and things like that, because back then at the height of, like, when I was in big law, that was what I prioritized, and I wasn't necessarily prioritizing in the way that in retrospect, like, I wish I had been a lot of that time of, like, being home and working from home and being able to, like, walk out of my office after a call and see my kids for 10 minutes at 1:15 before I go back to my next call, or to have the freedom to take a week and a half to spend in Utah this week and this month and whatever. So to me, I wouldn't have had the same level of excitement that Eric would have. I would have thought this was the craziest idea. Why would anyone ever do this? Like, how could you walk away from having it all? Right.
Well,
So for me, there was definitely a mind shift, a mental shift that had to play these last several years that led me to be like, yeah, this is what I want to do long term.
And Jacob, tell us about your experience though, right? Because you're a Major League Baseball player for how many years, right? And during that period of time, like, are you sure that, hey, I'm going to go on to be a financial advisor? Or how do you, and are, if I had told you as a second-year Major League Baseball player, like, you'd be on this ridiculous podcast with these 2 washed-up attorneys, like, how would you, would you be happy with that?
Yeah, it's interesting to hear. I think I have a unique perspective on it. I mean, I played 11 years professionally, but I think that doesn't really tell the story. Like, I was the 9th overall pick. I was a top 10 prospect in all of baseball. I got to the big leagues at 20 years old. If you map that out and you look at other guys that have gotten to the big leagues, had that same path, you're talking guys that are borderline Hall of Famers, some guys that are Hall of Famers, guys that have made $200 million. It didn't work out like that for me. I mean, I played 5 years in the big leagues, parts of 9 seasons. Like, all in all, I'm proud of the career I had, but it certainly wasn't 2 years in. I wasn't thinking, okay, well, I'm going to be doing this in the future. To your point, Eric, I think a lot of those lessons I learned along the way positioned me for what I'm doing now, but I could have never seen that in the moment. And if you would have asked me that question, a naive version of Jacob Turner at 21 would have said, like, oh, you're crazy, right? Like, I'm going to do this. And I think part of that's age, part of that's I had a confidence level in myself that I was going to be able to do it. Part of that was, like, baseball was all I had known. So, yeah, I certainly wouldn't have thought that. But as I look back on it today, I'm super grateful for the experiences I've had. And I can honestly say I wouldn't change any of those experiences, the good ones and the bad ones.
Well, and you probably had to have that mindset at that time because you're competing at the absolute highest level, right? And, like, even if you have the natural talent, I'd imagine that you've got to be ridiculously dialed in to perform at that level.
I-
And if you're thinking anything other than like, I'm going to be the greatest of all time, you probably don't. Like when Mike Tyson got beat up in his last fight and he was like, I don't have it anymore. I'm embarrassing the sport. I'm not coming back,
Yeah.
Like it's probably an either or, I would think. But
Yeah,
you tell me.
I think it's like that in anything, right? Whether it's entrepreneurship or sports, you have to have an inherent belief in yourself. If you're an entrepreneur, you're simply betting on yourself, just like you are as an athlete. You're just betting on yourself that I can do something that most people are telling me I can't do. Just like you're an entrepreneur, you just go start a business, and the first year everybody tells you you're crazy, or what are you thinking, or even the people around you that really love you are like, are you sure that's a good idea? So I do think there's an inherent belief and confidence that you just have to choose to have it. It's your decision. Like, do you want to have it or not?
So let's switch gears, Jacob, because I'm excited to have an athlete on this SMB Minute on Live Golf PGA Tour Day. We've got a merger in M&A, athletics. I mean, this is like a match made in heaven here. I was looking, Kevin. I don't think that the merger agreement is public because I don't think either organization is a public entity. So we don't know.
Yeah, I was searching earlier. Yeah, I can't.
We don't have the terms of it.
Here's
but
the
it's
interesting
fascinating
thing.
Now,
Here's the interesting thing. Think about M&A in general. Think about if you had two, we'll just take two service-based businesses. Service-based business over here pays their employees a certain way, and service-based business over here pays their employees a certain way. One of them's making 20 times what the other one's making, and they're like, yeah, you know what, we're just going to merge together. So that's the part that I'm super curious about is what does that look like? So group over here is like, I got this quote-unquote guaranteed money, and now I don't know what the terms of the agreement said, but they had to show up to get the money. They didn't have to win. They just had to show up to get the money. They're making 20 times more than the guy over here. And now they're going to be back in the locker room together on the quote unquote same tour, which I think is just going to be a fascinating dynamic. Because I have to think there's going to be some guys that come from Live. Think about the guys that Live brought over. They brought over some guys that are more veteran golfers, but had big brands, were willing to speak out a little bit. Think about like the first interview that Phil Mickelson and Ian Poulter do and talk about the money they made, and now they're back on the same tour. I want to see what that looks like. I'd be curious to see too if you asked Jay Monahan, the commissioner of the PGA Tour, if he could go back in time, okay? Because again, to your point, Eric, I think Live Golf has a quote unquote bad product. They're on the CW. Nobody's really watching them. I'm a huge golfer and I'm not watching them. Yeah. I am the prototypical golf fan. I don't know what's happening on the Live Tour. But the reason why they got the media attention they got was because of the feud with the PGA Tour. So if we rewind and we say, okay, these guys leave, and the PGA Tour is like, fine, go ahead, leave. And they just never mention their name again. They're just like, let them go. You can sign whatever contract you want. I don't care. You can't come back here. But we're not going to talk about it anymore. Does this ever happen? Because it really happened because they created this sense in the media that they were doing something meaningful when realistically they had a bad product that was burning cash. They weren't making any money. I mean, look at the field in terms of like who's actually at these events. There's nobody at these events. They look like amateur golf events, but now all of a sudden they're back in the game.
We had one here in Orange County National here in Central Florida, and it was like the worst major sporting event I've ever been to.
Yeah, it'll be fascinating to see.
But
now,
I think the other thing too to think about.
Yeah, they gave him power.
They gave him power, but also
Go ahead, Jacob.
What happens for the PGA Tour guys that didn't sign these contracts? You know, like Tiger reportedly got offered $800 million. I think Rory got offered $500 million. Matsuyama $300 million. Zalatoris $100+ million. And they did this on the back of saying like, we're going to back Jay Monahan. We're all going to be unified together. Tiger's flying in for meetings. And now all of a sudden, I don't picture a room of Tiger Woods, Justin Thomas, Zalatoris, all these guys being like, you know what? On second thought, we're ready to merge with Live Golf. So this is a decision that came without players' buy-in or approval. So I just, full swing 2024 is going to be pretty good, I think.
It's going to be fascinating to watch the dust settle, for sure.
Yeah. Well, we'll keep watching it. All right, guys, we're 22 minutes deep here. Should we wrap up, Kev?
Yeah, let's wrap it up. We could talk all day. So maybe we'll have to do this again soon and hope for more major sports.
Let's give Jacob an opportunity. Jacob, plug your social media, plug your firm.
Yeah, you guys can find me at the Sudden Wealth. I own a firm called JL Strategic Wealth. We help athletes and entrepreneurs with money, a lot of the same things I went through. So you can find me on Twitter.
At the Sudden Wealth on Twitter. All right, man.
All right, we'll talk again
This
soon,
is fun.
Jacob.
Thanks, Jacob. Thanks, Kevin.